You are here tonight, not by accident, but by an orchestration far greater than your own design. There comes a moment in every life when the long preparation, the hidden chiseling of the heart, and the quiet shaping of the mind converge into one reality. You are ready. Not ready in the shallow sense of having gathered enough strength or courage of your own, but ready because the one who calls you has decided that the time has come. For years, perhaps, you have wondered why certain doors would not open, why certain prayers seemed to vanish into the dark. You mistook delay for denial, silence for absence, but heaven's patience is not neglect. It is the wise gardener allowing roots to grow deep before the storm comes. And now the storm is here, not to destroy you, but to reveal what was planted in the soil of your soul. God does not waste a single hour of your life. Every pain, every disappointment, every season where you felt invisible, these were the chisels and hammers in his workshop. You have been in the shadows because the light would have blinded you too soon. But tonight, the voice that spoke the stars into being whispers to you, it is time. And because it is time, the impossible is no longer impossible. The mountain you feared to climb will not shrink, but you will find your feet steadied and your breath sustained as you take the first step. The Red Sea will not part until you walk toward it, yet when your foot touches the edge, the waters will obey. The chains that have held you are not rusted iron, they are paper before the fire of his command. You are not being summoned to a comfortable road. The path ahead will still require courage, for God has no interest in raising servants who remain children in spirit. He calls you to the impossible not because it flatters you, but because it glorifies him. What he is about to do in your life is not proof of your capability. It is proof of his. Tonight is not about you gathering more faith. It is about realizing that faith has been gathering you. Heaven has been aligning your steps, even the missteps, so that this exact moment could arrive. You may feel trembling within you, but trembling is not weakness. It is the echo of eternity inside your bones. And so, when you walk out from here, do not look for confirmation from the world. The world will tell you it is too risky, too late, too much. But the one who knows the end from the beginning has already written the victory. The scroll is sealed, the ink is dry. God's timing is deliberate. Every delay was preparation for this moment. God's timing is not a random sequence of events, but a deliberate unfolding of a plan that has been in motion long before you ever understood it. Every closed door, every unanswered prayer, every season of waiting has been part of a divine strategy, not to frustrate you, but to form you. There are moments when you looked at the calendar of your life and thought you were behind. Moments when the dreams you carried seemed to be slipping further away. And you wondered if perhaps you had misunderstood what you were called to do. But what you did not see was the careful orchestration happening behind the curtain, the weaving of unseen threads that would eventually form a pattern far greater than anything you could have designed. The waiting has not been wasted. You have been living through seasons where it felt as if heaven itself was silent. But silence is not abandonment. Silence is often the training ground where trust is forged. The delay was not punishment but preparation, because a premature blessing can become a burden. The foundation had to be laid strong enough to hold the weight of what was coming. God has been working in the unseen, shaping your heart, sharpening your discernment, and stripping away what would have crumbled under pressure. He has been teaching you to hear his voice clearly, so that when the moment arrived, you would not mistake it for coincidence, but recognize it as his call. It is in the waiting that character is refined. You may have felt hidden, overlooked, or forgotten, but the truth is that you have been protected. Protection does not always look like a wall around you. Sometimes it looks like an extended season of obscurity, where your roots grow deep enough to withstand what the future will demand from you. The growth you could not see in yourself was the very thing that was being strengthened. Your endurance, your faith, your ability to trust without constant reassurance. You were not being delayed, You were being built. God's timing often contradicts human logic. We expect immediacy. He works in eternity. What feels like a detour to you is often a direct route in His eyes. You thought the opportunities you missed were the key to your destiny, but He knew that accepting them too soon would have taken you off course. The people who left, the chances that slipped away, the changes that disrupted your plans, they were not accidents. They were alignments, positioning you so that when the appointed time arrived, nothing and no one could take from you what He had prepared. When you look back, you will realize that certain things had to end before the right doors could open. If you had been given the promise before you were ready, you might have tried to sustain it in your own strength and watched it crumble under the weight of self-reliance. Instead, God allowed you to face enough challenges to understand that without Him, the promise is impossible to hold. The delays taught you dependence, the waiting taught you worship, the longing taught you to value what is to come. This is why tonight matters. The moments that felt empty have been filled with unseen purpose. The prayers that seemed unanswered have been stored like seeds, waiting for the exact season when they would take root and grow. Every step, even the painful ones, has been leading you here, to a point in time where preparation meets opportunity, and where heaven declares that the waiting season has served its purpose. God's timing is deliberate, and you are standing in the place He has prepared for you from the very beginning. The impossible becomes possible when you step forward in obedience. The impossible does not suddenly become possible because circumstances have shifted in your favor. It becomes possible when you step forward in obedience, even when nothing around you looks different. Faith has never been about waiting until everything feels safe. It has always been about moving when the voice of God calls, regardless of what your eyes see. The path to the miraculous is rarely paved with certainty. More often, it is lined with risk, resistance, and the unknown. Yet it is in that unknown where the fullness of God's power is revealed. There are moments when you stand before something that looks unmovable, a wall, a mountain, a sea, and every natural instinct tells you to turn back. You might wait for some sign that the obstacle will move before you dare to take a step. But heaven does not respond to hesitation. It responds to trust in action. The sea did not part for the Israelites while they were standing at a distance, discussing the possibilities. It parted when they walked toward it in obedience, carrying nothing but a promise. The waters obeyed the one who spoke them into existence, but the step of faith was the trigger that released the miracle. It is easy to believe when the outcome feels certain, but obedience is tested in the moments when nothing makes sense. Sometimes the call will require you to speak when silence feels safer, to move when staying still seems wiser, to risk when comfort calls you to remain. God's instructions often come without full explanations, because He is not asking you to understand every detail. He is asking you to trust His character. You cannot measure the possible by what you can see with human eyes. The true measure comes from knowing the one who sees beyond all time and space. There is a reason God often gives you only the next step and not the entire map. If you saw every twist, trial, and test ahead, you might hesitate or even refuse the journey. But when you take one step at a time in obedience, you find that what seemed impossible from a distance becomes manageable when taken in pieces. Every act of faith draws down more of His strength into your life, making the next step lighter than the one before. The impossible is rarely shattered in one moment. It is dismantled piece by piece as you keep moving forward. The enemy of your soul will always try to convince you that you are not ready, not equipped, not strong enough to do what is in front of you. But readiness in God's eyes is not measured by your resources. It is measured by your willingness. A surrendered heart can accomplish more in one act of obedience than a lifetime of human effort. When you move in alignment with His voice, you are not acting in your own power, but carrying the authority of the one who sent you. Obedience is the bridge between the promise and the fulfillment. Without it, the promise remains an idea, a hope, a dream in your heart. With it, the promise steps into reality, no matter how improbable it seemed. Some miracles are waiting on the other side of a single act of courage. It may be starting the thing you have put off for years, forgiving someone who has hurt you deeply, leaving behind a place that no longer aligns with where God is taking you. The step itself may feel small, but in heaven's economy, it has the weight to shift everything in your future. The impossible will not shrink to fit your comfort. You must grow in faith to meet it. That growth happens when you choose to walk forward, not because you know how it will end, but because you know who has called you. Every story of transformation begins with a decision to move in obedience, even when the ground beneath you feels unsteady. In that decision, the impossible begins to bow to the will of God, and what once felt unreachable becomes the very place where His glory is revealed. Faith is not about your strength. It is about God's unshakable plan. Faith is not about the strength you can muster within yourself. It is about unshakable certainty that God's plan is already written and will not fail. Human strength will always have limits, but the one who holds the future has no boundaries, no exhaustion, no hesitation. If faith depended on your ability to maintain it perfectly, it would crumble in moments of fear or weakness. But true faith is anchored in something greater. It rests on the character and promise of God, who has never once gone back on His word. We often confuse faith with feelings, believing that if we feel confident, then our faith is strong, and if we feel afraid, our faith must be weak. Yet faith is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to move forward in trust despite fear's presence. Your feelings will rise and fall with the tides of life, but God's plan is steady as the shore. He is not measuring the size of your courage. He is asking whether you will put what little you have into His hands, allowing Him to be the strength you lack. The unshakable nature of God's plan means that nothing, no mistake you have made, no obstacle in your path, no scheme of the enemy, can override His purposes for your life. What He has spoken over you is not tentative or fragile, it is sealed. This does not mean the path will be smooth or free of opposition. In fact, the certainty of His plan often invites challenges, because what is destined will be contested. But the presence of resistance is not a sign that you are off course. It is often confirmation that you are moving in the right direction. When you lean on your own strength, every setback feels final, every delay feels like failure. But when you anchor your faith in God's unshakable plan, you see setbacks for what they are, repositionings. You begin to understand that delays are not denials, but divine alignments. You start to see that even your own shortcomings can be woven into the story for good, because His power is made perfect in weakness. Faith is not about proving yourself capable. It is about surrendering to the one who is already able. This surrender is not passive resignation, but active trust. It means choosing to believe that what He promised will come to pass, even when all visible evidence points the other way. It is the decision to hold on to His word when circumstances tempt you to let go. It is a quiet confidence that grows in the soil of prayer, watered by the remembrance of all the times He has already been faithful. When you look back at the path you have walked, you see moments where you thought the end had come, yet He carried you through. That history becomes the foundation on which your present faith stands. Faith shifts your focus from what you can control to who is in control. It takes the weight off your shoulders and places it into hands far more capable. You stop measuring your future by the size of your resources and start measuring it by the size of His authority. This perspective changes how you face the unknown. The future may be hidden from you, but it is never hidden from him. The outcome has already been written in his book, and no power in heaven or on earth can erase it. When you understand that faith is not about your own strength, but about God's plan, you stop trying to manufacture peace through self-reliance. Instead, you find peace in knowing that the author of your story has already finished the final chapter. You may not yet see how the pieces fit, but he sees the entire tapestry, every thread, every color, every detail woven with intention. In that knowledge, you can stand firm, not because you have all the answers, but because you know the one who does.